you ain't heard about us yet, well, you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down.
Hey guys, welcome to another week episode edition of the TWSN Soccer Sitdown Show. I'm joined with Christian DeBlock, Max Marrero, and Randall Evans. How you guys doing today?
Doing well, man.
Doing well.
Can't complain.
So we got a bunch of topics here today to talk about. I mean, we're gonna really focus on the Premier League this week. And I mean, let's start off with Chelsea's attack, considering they just won 7-0 without any real attackers against Norwich. And we know it's Norwich, but they're top of the league. They look very convincing in doing so. I mean, again, it is Norwich, but Mason Mount hat trick. He really had his first really good game of the season, and they're doing this without Lukaku. They're doing it without Werner, without Pulisic, without. I mean, I don't think Kai Havertz played either today. So
no, he did.
No, he started up front as a center forward. His record as a center forward is incredible, though. 13 goals, 2 assists over 110 minutes. So he's lethal up there.
So yeah, I guess Rand, to start off with you, how do you feel about Chelsea without all these attackers and still putting up 7?
The flag says it all. Pride of London. They expect to do well. They prepare. It was the most attack-minded I've seen them under Tuchel since he started. Once he was appointed at Chelsea, they were ruthless. They were defending really well. They were winning the ball back. They were aggressive. They were always hungry and never satisfied. They had an insatiable appetite for goals today. That's something I want to see going forward, right? Obviously, it's Norwich, one of the worst clubs in the league, definitely going to be a relegation candidate at the end of the year. But I want them to play this well every single week. Timo Werner, he does a lot of things in terms of creating space, getting into challenging areas for the opposition, but he doesn't finish his goals. He's not – ever since he got brought into Chelsea, the Premier League, Bundesliga tax, as they say, it's a troll, but it's true. I mean, he hasn't been able to get on target. So to see Chelsea be this ruthless, Callum Hudson-Odoi was obviously, besides Mason Mount, was my man of the match. He was very, very good in space. He was aggressive. He had a goal today. He also had an assist last week. So Callum Hudson-Odoi, I'm so glad he didn't go to Bayern Munich because I don't remember 2 years ago he was heavily linked to Bayern Munich when he was Maurizio Sarri was there. So to see him playing very well was encouraging as a Chelsea fan. To see RLC Ruben Loftus-Cheek playing well, the guy had 100 touches against Brentford a week ago. So RLC is finally healthy. He's fighting first place at Chelsea. He's 6'3". He's our tallest midfielder. We have a lot of midfield options, but he brings a uniqueness that we don't have with our other players. So just being able to see Chelsea be this ruthless in attack, obviously losing Lukaku and Warner at Malmo, the 4-0 victory, seeing Andreas Christensen get his goal, they're trending upward. And I think even though Lukaku's saying he can be back sooner, this is the best time for him to miss 3 weeks because we have some very favorable matchups coming up. So,
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I just looked at your next 2 matches before the November international window, and that would be Newcastle at St. James Park and then Burnley at Stamford Bridge. So I think those are 2 games that Chelsea should win, even without Lukaku and Timo Werner. I think, those teams don't defend particularly well. I know Burnley sets up to defend, but I think Chelsea will do enough to break them down. But, yeah, I agree, Randall. I think going into the year, everybody knows that I had Chelsea winning the league. I'm not sure if I stand by that as things currently stand. I think City and Liverpool are playing slightly better. But then again, Chelsea at this point are 4 points at top of the league. Obviously, with these teams, they're going to have to play. I know City has a tough game against Brighton today, and then obviously Liverpool's playing at Old Trafford tomorrow. So it's going to be difficult for both those teams to pick up 3 points this weekend. But I think, overall, Chelsea have been very good this season. They've been a little reliant on Lukaku's goals, I would say, but that's fine. I think they still have the ability to have guys like you mentioned, Mason Mount, who's been a little underwhelming this year, but today comes up with 3 goals and an assist. So I think as those players start to get, back to being at their best or close to their best, I think you'll see a lot more goals from everybody else besides Lukaku when he returns from injury. So no stress, no worries for Chelsea. I think they're right where they want to be, both in the Champions League and in the Premier League. So I think they're right there as a title contender, and nothing changes as a result of beating probably the worst team in the league, per se. I think
probably they are. They're going down.
Joe's not going to sell us short, but
yeah. But I totally agree with that sentiment as well. But I do think Man United and Liverpool will be an interesting matchup. Obviously, if you're a rival team like Chelsea, you want to draw. You don't need especially a draw in that fixture as well, because you don't want a Liverpool victory in that one, because Liverpool is right on Chelsea's heels. So I do think it'll be interesting to see down the season, because we all know you can make noise early in the season, but if you're a contender versus a pretender, you're only going to be a contender if you can have your fixtures when they get very congested. The period from November to February are the most important fixtures in a soccer season, right? Because before Boxing Day and after Boxing Day, you have so many fixtures coming up. You have Champions League, you have round of 16 draws, you have Carabao Cup, you have FA Cup. So it gets hot, it gets heavy. So having that squad rotation early, getting that chemistry with players who know, hey, as long as I prove myself when called upon by the skipper, I'm gonna by the gaffer, I should say, I'm gonna be ready. What do you think about that, Max?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think people are not really talking about Chelsea as much as they're talking about City and Liverpool for obvious reason. Not anything against Chelsea, but just Liverpool and City have been playing incredibly this year. As I predicted early on in the season, I figured it was going to be City 1, Liverpool 2, and it may very well end up that. But Chelsea might have something to say about that. And look, beating Norwich 7-0, it's a great result for Chelsea, albeit it's against the worst team, but don't take that away, because if this is the game to give Mason Mount confidence, then that's going to be an issue for most teams going down as the season progresses, because Mason Mount is a world-class player, as we all know. So I'm excited to see how things shape up. I expect Chelsea to be in the thick of things, but I still expect City and Liverpool to be neck to neck and probably fighting for the title this year. So I'm interested to see how things go.
I'm excited personally to see how Chelsea fares when they finally regress to the norm, because Mendy is not going to have a 96% save percentage throughout the year. That's just not feasible. That's not possible. It's insane. And then good on Mendy. I'm not trying to take anything away from Mendy, but that never happens, right? So when he starts regressing back down to 84%, around maybe in the 70s, right? Is Chelsea's attack going to be good enough to win them games?
Yeah.
That's the big question. Will it? Because Lukaku hasn't looked good at all. I mean, other than that game against Arsenal, what has he really done? He hasn't been very effective. Timo, again, we know Timo, he's deadly when he's offside, but when he's onside, he can't really do anything.
It's about like 3-4 sitters a game. It's Alvarado all over again. So don't give me.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing with Werner is that he knows how to create space, and I mean, he set up that game-winning goal from Kai Havertz in the Champions League. So I think Kai's good. I don't think he's great, but I think he's good. And then you got Pulisic. When he's healthy, he's great. But when is he healthy? So that attack, I think, is going to need to continue to improve. This is going to be a game where I think if it builds confidence in the midfield to help progress the ball a little bit and help out with everything, even some players who don't score all the time, to get them on the board like Mason Mount. He's not really known for being a scorer, but when he
but what they got out of their defenders this year, I mean, they're scoring goals for fun at this point. Chilwell's in the form of his life. He's one of the best defenders in the league right now. Hard to argue it. He obviously was not being selected a ton, because Marcos Alonso had kept him out of the side. And to see what Chilwell's been doing, I think it's his 3rd or 4th consecutive game with the goal. He is leading the defense. He's always been a solid left back, but since he got bought from Leicester City, I've been so impressed with his mentality. He has a very high mentality. He's a great player mentally, because it would have been easy to be down on yourself, but I think playing under Tuchel, these boys understand, like, hey, if I don't have the right mentality, I'm just not going to see the pitch that week. And every time he's been given a chance this year, he's shown why he was the first choice left back for us. So, and Rudiger, the contract situations with him make me very nervous as a Chelsea fan. I believe if he leaves Chelsea, obviously we'll fill the void like we always do, but he's not someone that we need to lose. He's a leader in the locker room. He's definitely taken Trevor Chalobah under his wing, and seeing what Rudiger's been able to do in 4 years is exciting. He's only 28 years old. He's in his prime still. He's 6'3". I mean, we have three players that are 6'3". Christensen, Chalobah, and Rudiger are all 6'3". So, I mean, that's great for aerial duels. That's great for headers. That's great for clearances. So our defense right now it's going to be very tough going forward to obviously keep this momentum. But if anybody can do it, I wouldn't put it past Chelsea to keep getting this done. But I think when they play teams like City, Liverpool, United down the stretch here, it's going to be extremely important in games where they're equally as defensive and equally as adequate defensively as we are. Can we get those goals like you guys discussed? So that's one of the most important things going forward.
Absolutely. And I want to shift over here, because we've been mentioning Liverpool a little bit, and they look good. They look good, but they've yet to beat a side in the top 10. So can they do it? They have a chance today against Manchester United. Not today, but tomorrow against Manchester United, which is probably one of the biggest games, probably the biggest game of the week. I mean, it's not a derby, but it's a derby in a way. Huge rivalry. And Christian, you're a Liverpool fan. How do you feel about Liverpool right now? Because I mean, yes, they look good against teams that aren't good, but then when they play teams that are good, they can only really scrape draws.
Yeah, especially in the league. I can vividly remember the Chelsea game. That's the one that really sparks the mention because, Chelsea were very good in that match prior to getting Reece James sent off. And then Liverpool just were unable to break them down when they were down to 10 men for 45 minutes. So that was disappointing. And then the other match that per se they played against one of the big boys was Manchester City. I thought that was a pretty even match. Phil Foden was absolutely fantastic, which I remember talking to Max offset. He was brilliant that game. But overall, Liverpool were very good that game. I think tomorrow is a more interesting match. I know Bruno's a doubt, which will be very important. Even if they have Jesse Lingard, that's a huge drop off in my opinion. So I think you're playing Manchester United at the best time. That's the biggest thing. So Liverpool have been very good. I don't think they've been, fantastic against the big sides, but they've been pretty effective. They weren't bad in the Chelsea match. They just weren't, good enough to win. And credit to Chelsea because when they're sitting in that defensive back line, they're maybe the toughest team to break down in Europe, even at this stage of the season. So, in terms of tomorrow, I'm pretty confident. Manchester United are not playing well right now. They fall behind in games and then are bailed out by their attacking quality in the second half. And I don't think they could do that tomorrow. I think, against teams like Atalanta and Villarreal in the Champions League, sure, that's fine because those teams are not, the best sides defensively, especially. And I think Liverpool with Virgil van Dijk, with Joel Matip, who's probably playing better than Virgil van Dijk this season, I'm not concerned about us, struggling defensively tomorrow. So I think
you guys haven't had the time to be healthy either. A lot of people forget when you guys were healthy, you've been winning titles as well. I mean, when you guys have had a healthy defense, Robertson's one of the best defenders in the world. Trent Alexander-Arnold, what can anybody say about him, rival fan or not? Everyone gives him his flowers as well. So
he's not a good defender. He's not a good defender. He's a good attacker.
Sure.
He's not a good
attacking right. He's the best attacking right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying though, getting healthy for Liverpool will be the first step for them because we know they have the depth. They were obviously a little bit stingy in the transfer market. They chose not to bring too many new players on. And I think that was the best strategy for them because we all know that comes with time because now you got to reintegrate new players. You got to have them learn your system. And that can take anywhere between a year to 2 years because Klopp has a very intricate and very detailed system that he likes to run at Liverpool Football Club. So it's interesting to consider those things as well. I think they don't necessarily need to bring in any more defenders or midfielders. I think their squad is definitely good enough to compete for a lot of trophies this year. It's just all going to come down to can they do it against big teams? So far, we've seen it in Champions League. They're able to have the guts to go and win against Milan on the at home in front of those fans, and they fared very well in the Champions League thus far. Mo Salah just absolutely taken over. But what can they do in the Prem? Because week in and week out, we know whether you're playing Southampton or you're playing United or Chelsea, you're going to get everyone's best shot. So and I think 7-2 of Villa last year or the year before is proof of that, right? So more than any other Big Six side, I think they're more vulnerable to those big losses than the other teams because they underrate.
I actually disagree because I think a lot of it is they had all of this pressure that came with winning, right? I mean, as you know, you're a Chelsea fan, obviously, Randall, you know that obviously it's taken a few years for Chelsea to bounce back. Now that they've been winning, they have now pressure that comes with that. And as a City fan, I've understood this for a couple of years now. The fact that Liverpool don't have any pressure on them means that they can go out and play at their best without having to worry.
Yeah.
People came into the season not expecting them to challenge for the title, but I decided that you know what, we had to show them their fair due respect because you know what, this is a team that just won the league 2 years ago. This is a team that suffered a ton of injuries, like you were suggesting last year, and obviously they lost their best player, or arguably the best player, in Virgil van Dijk last year to a terrible injury, and obviously it's taking time for him to get back to his best, but we know that even his presence changes the way that team plays. Also from a leadership standpoint. And we can't discount the fact that Mo Salah right now is arguably the most informed player in the world. I don't think there's a better player right now than Mo Salah. So I just think the way that they've been playing, it's hard for me to see them be susceptible to some losses, because it seems to me that they have that same sort of drive they had maybe 2, even 3 years ago when they were competing back and forth with City for the title. And it just didn't seem like they were letting up. Yeah, they're conceding a few more goals this year than they have in years past, but I attribute that a lot to Virgil van Dijk still picking up his best form. And I think eventually he'll get it. But they have, in my opinion, the second, if not the best manager in the entire league, or arguably in the world at the moment, in Jurgen Klopp. And I just think that he's going to set them right and set them straight. And I just think the Liverpool and City, in no particular order, in my opinion, are the top 2 teams, probably, well, definitely in the league, but if not in the world. And I think that Chelsea are for sure in that conversation, but I just think that the way that these 2 managers have won with these teams consistently over the past few years, it's hard for me to see a team beat either one of those 2 and root for the title.
I definitely have my qualms about that statement, because Mendy, since October of 2020, since last year, his save percentage is the best in Champions League. It's 80, I believe it's like 85%. And they conceded the least amount of goals in an entire UCL campaign, in 4 goals ever. And that's incredible, considering Alonso is employed by that team. If you know, you know. He's not the best defender in the world, right? So I do think I definitely agree. I think among the English clubs, United, Liverpool, and Chelsea are all in City. Obviously, it's just 1, 2, 3. You can obviously go all day long about who you think is 1A, 1, 2, 1B, whatever the case may be. But I think Chelsea has shown that when they need their defense to get a result, more often than not, they're going to get that result.
Their defense is not their issue, though. I've never disputed how good their defense is. I'm worried about their chances to score against big teams. You saw it against City. They weren't able to do anything against City.
Yeah, but they beat both Madrid teams very comfortably. People forget this, right? They had the away goal from Pulisic against Real Madrid, and they took care of Atletico, which is a way more defensive side than what
but
they
both aren't at their peak.
Both weren't at their peak, but they did dispatch both teams pretty easily, you know. And that stands for something, in my opinion, because Real Madrid, we all know Real Madrid is building again. They're kind of in a rebuilding process. But Atletico has had Simeone. They just won the league last year. This is not a team to be whiffed at. Before they got Griezmann back on transfer, before they had made some transfer move and got Matthias Cunha from Hertha Berlin, that team was legit. They were expecting to go far in the actual competition itself. Julian Lopetegui from Sevilla said this team can win it all this year. And Sevilla is one of the best Spanish teams in La Liga as well. You know, in Villarreal, you look at United and what their inability to beat a team that they should comfortably beat. I think it goes to show that not every single manager is motivating their players in the right way to feel like they have something.
But I'm saying, but my argument is, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I'm just saying my argument is solely, if we're talking about it within the Premier League, the way that Chelsea have been playing, and they haven't been playing poorly at all, obviously, but I think their biggest question mark is definitely not their defense; it's their attack. And I think that, how are Chelsea going to win the league? It's by assuming Romelu Lukaku comes back from injury. It's by feeding Romelu Lukaku the ball and letting Romelu Lukaku score goals on a consistent basis. And I just don't see. Maybe this game helps Mason Mount come back to form, and maybe that can add an element to their team. But I'm just saying, like, as of now, the track record has been that they haven't been very creative in front of goal, and they haven't really given Romelu Lukaku, when he does play, those opportunities to score on a consistent basis. But I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just talking about what they're doing up to now. And that's why I have City and Liverpool a little bit ahead of them, because I think when it matters the most, I trust those 2 teams to get a goal more than I trust Chelsea. But it's not to say that Chelsea can't get it done. But
how do you feel in Leipzig, though, when you guys conceded, when it was a 6-3 victory? Was that in Champions League match week 2, I believe it was? How does that make you feel
with Leipzig?
Yeah, how does that make you feel as a City fan? Does that make you feel like you guys shouldn't concede that many goals to a team like Leipzig? I mean, Leipzig's one of the best teams in Germany, but I think City's defense is not the best it has been over the last couple of years. Ruben Diaz, he is by far your best defender, but guys like Nathan Ake, that was brought in from Bournemouth, hasn't really
Nathan Ake doesn't start week in and week out.
Exactly.
For that reason.
Exactly.
And look, don't get me wrong. I listen. I wasn't a fan of that, but that was the game script in a way. I mean, both teams were just scoring, at their will, and the better team won. But Listen, I think that's a fair point, but I think in general, City's defense has played pretty solid. I think Nathan Ake is not a part of that rotation for a reason. I think finally we're seeing Laporte and Ruben Diaz work together. I think that was the biggest question mark last year. Obviously, John Stones and Ruben Diaz were incredible, but Laporte, I would argue, is a better defender than John Stones. And just seeing him be able to mesh with Ruben Diaz has been great for City. So I expect their defense to be very solid. It's just in the context, and let me go back to the context of Liverpool and United really quickly for this game. I expect Liverpool to win this game, and I expect them to dominate this game. I'm not saying they'll win, by a scoreline of more than maybe 2-1, but you could still dominate a game without necessarily scoring a ton of goals. And I just think that Liverpool come in with an aura of confidence. And United, especially if you want to talk about defense, their defense has been so shaky. Varane is injured right now. Maguire, who they rushed back from injury, has looked iffy at best.
He's still injured.
He's still injured,
still
absolutely. So with that in mind, there's only so much Ronaldo can do. Ronaldo's inevitable, sure, but there's only so much Ronaldo himself can do, especially at this age. So I just think that, the way that Liverpool have been scoring goals at their will and the way that Mo Salah has been playing, it's really tough for me to see this United team not concede a goal and not ultimately lose this game, especially if Bruno Fernandes, arguably their most important player, is out. So yes, I think it helps them the fact that this is not in Anfield. I think if this is in Anfield, no questions asked, Liverpool wins this game. But so I think being in Old Trafford does even it out a little bit. But I still have to go Liverpool. I just think right now they're the better of the two teams.
Yeah, but yes, I agree with that. Two things though. One, Liverpool hasn't beaten a side that is finished that is in the top 13.
They almost beat City. They almost beat City.
But did they?
And, no, they didn't. But they played City to their peak, and to me, like that just proves like that's a misleading statistic because I think that a lot of it was based on Liverpool having injuries last year, and I think that they're picking up form as they keep going. Like we have to show Liverpool their due respect. I think they're bound to beat one of these top 10 teams very soon.
I think they, and then also another thing that bothers me about this game is that, for Liverpool purposes, is that Ole might be getting the sack soon, and we know how Manchester.
No, he's not.
He might. Yes, he might.
No, Joe, we've been around this for a year and a half.
I know because he ends up getting wins when he needs to get wins. He needs a win. He needs a win.
No, you're reading into Twitter too much.
It's at home, and he has Ronaldo.
He'll be there by the end of the year.
Surprised.
Should he? Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly right, Max. It's not a question of whether he should or not. It's whether they will sack him or not, and they won't.
They won't.
Come on, Joe.
I think it's getting close again.
I mean, maybe. But then, okay, if you're saying that, then odds are he's going to get the result of the century tomorrow, and they're going to win.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
I hope not.
Everything points to a Liverpool win, which is why it's getting me nervous. That's why I wouldn't touch it. I'm not a betting man, but I would not touch this game just because Liverpool's on the form of their life. Salah, best player in the world. Yes, right now he's the best player in the world.
Yep.
Injuries are killing United right now. They're in terrible form in the league. There's already been rumors about him losing the locker room with Rashford and just them not doing well. There's already talks about him maybe being on the hot seat. Rashford's bagging too, and Rashford's a big game player too. Don't sleep on Rashford. He might bag a goal or two. I don't know. This is gonna be a great game. I can't wait for it. It's gonna be insane. Just attacking back and forth, and I think it's gonna be close. I mean, it's at Old Trafford too. I mean, United's not gonna want to lose there, and I think it's a big game for Ronaldo.
It's going to go either way. Like Max mentioned, 2-1's probably somewhere in that vicinity. It's going to be separated by a goal. I think that's where you find it tomorrow.
I think the loss of Bruno Fernandes, though, is huge. Because that man, he's special. He's a special player. He's got a great mentality.
He's more than anything, he's just so integral to the way that team plays. Like he is the creative outlet in that midfield. And without him, it's just hard for me to see them creating too many chances.
Yeah, I don't think Lingard could do that. He's not that guy.
Unfortunately, I don't think so.
He had that nice little patch running for him last year. But I mean, again, he should have made a move to West Ham. But
he was moving. He was balling for them.
Yep.
Speaking of West Ham, they're 9th right now, but they're 1 point off top 4. That's
Well,
great.
and also they're undefeated. They're top of their group
Yeah.
I guess top of the Europa
They
League
just
right
won
now. I mean, it's
yesterday,
incredible.
Yeah,
They got a
won
big
the
game this weekend too. They got a big game this weekend. How about that?
What
Who
are
you
they
guys
playing?
got?
Spurs.
I never thought in my lifetime I would see Hammers doing well in any capacity because they were just so bad for years. So it's crazy to
That's
watch.
good to see.
Speaking
It's
of
great to
Europa
see
League,
it.
though, Hudson Daka had 4 goals, and he's looking like the future of Leicester City Football Club. And I'm excited to see what he can do when Vardy finally gives it up and decides to retire. But Hudson Daka is exciting. The guy.
Let me ask you this, since we're on the topic of Leicester City, what do you think that them beating United and obviously doing what they did in the Europa League just past week? Do you think that's their momentum to finally pick up some
They
form
need
this
that
year?
momentum. They were playing very poorly. They didn't defend well. Losing Wesley Fofana is the reason, though, right?
That's a huge loss.
Because Wesley Fofana was their leader back there. He was very good. He's young. He's fast. Doesn't seem to make a lot of mistakes. Patson Daka is another player that they brought in. But I would look at Sumare, too. Sumare, they brought in from Lille, was supposed to be one of their creative players and creative outlet players. He hasn't really done anything void of the game against that this recently in that Europa League fixture. So Leicester City is such a mystery to me because the last couple of years they deserve to be in the top 4, but they always get in their own way and they self-sabotage. The last game of the season last year, they lose to Tottenham Football Club, right? Tottenham Hotspur, and they give Chelsea Champions League because of that result. So it's like Brendan Rodgers, I think, even though he's won the first FA Cup in their history last year, the expectations are getting higher and higher for him.
It's the history of Leicester. It's the history of Leicester.
It is the
What are they
history of
gonna do?
Leicester.
Fight for top 4 all year? You have a chance to top 4? Oh, I fumbled it.
Yeah, exactly.
Every year.
It's a bottle job every year, but I think eventually the board gets sick of that kind of thing. He has to start winning more stuff because at the end of the day, top 4 any given year is not necessarily guaranteed to any top team, let alone a Big 6 club. So the fact that he's been able to break in and be so close, he has to make that transition this year because they have too much quality. You know, Tielemans has to play better. I feel like Tielemans will have a good game once every 5 games. He needs to be more consistent. Iheanacho showed why he's one of their best players last year. He had a hat trick on March 14th, right? He had a hat trick towards the end of the season last year, and he supplied one of the assists for the goals this week. So Iheanacho is one of their key players. Obviously, Sumare, Tielemans, like they have some young guns. They have some young players there that can make some noise, but it's all a matter of form. And I want to see hopefully the matchup on Sunday against Brentford. That's going to be a tough game. Brentford Community Stadium, Max Chelsea, how tough of a game that was for them. I mean, they're very well coached by Thomas Frank. They always seem to be prepared. They use a lot of analytics to get their guys ready. I think Leicester City needs to go in and prove that they're a top side by getting a win. A draw there against Brentford just shows that they're just same old Leicester. You know, they're going to do well. James Maddison has completely dropped off the face of the earth. I don't even know if he plays football anymore.
Remember that move to Arsenal, and Arsenal said no, we're going to stick with ESR. What a great move! What a great move to Arsenal, man!
Let's talk about Arsenal.
Let's give Arsenal a round of applause for once in this show. Come on, guys.
You're giving them one? That's
Wait, can I bring up something pretty
Good.
random? Can I bring up something pretty random that I just noticed? Right now in the live table, Leeds United is losing to Wolves. They are in the relegation zone right now. I don't know what you guys think about that. That's kind of insane to me.
Makes sense to me. They have a
Wait, so you're
terrible Bielsa ball is awful. Bielsa ball is awful.
Yeah, it's not suited to
It's you know what it is? It's entertaining when it's successful, but when it fails badly because they don't have the defense to, for me, if you're going to play that style of soccer, you need to have a defense that can bail you out. You know what I mean? That was the issue that City was facing that year that Liverpool won the league when we lost Laporte and John Stones was in and out of the lineup. He wasn't even a regular. So we were playing Fernandinho as center back. What happened? We tried playing that style of football we've been playing for a long time. And then we were just conceding countless chances in the back because Fernandinho is just not a good center back. So
not to mention you guys
that's
lost
the issue.
too.
Oh, Otamendi, right. Good point.
Bielsa ball is chaos, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work in this situation. It was only a matter of time.
It works only when they have the defense to bail them out, but Leeds do not have that.
Think this is how bad Bielsa ball is. They made Manchester United look like title contenders match week 1. They're not title contenders. They're going to be fighting for top 4.
He's not wrong.
We take away that Pogba has like over half of his assists from that game.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a Pogba fan.
That's a great point.
I love Pogba, but like he had 4 assists in that game. I think he has 7 in the Prem this year?
Something like that, yeah.
And he's not. He didn't even start the match against. He didn't start midweek, did he? I don't think so. He's not. He's not.
No,
even
he didn't start
starting
midweek.
most
He didn't
games.
start midweek because you know why? Ole's job was on the line. Ole reliable. It's time for McFred.
No, but like,
Fred
you know
is
what?
so-
I actually completely wholeheartedly agree with that, because the thing is, Ole is so desperate because he knows that here's the trend. The trend for years has been, fans back him. He's looked safe. Players have progressed. They look that they're happy to play for United. The stature of the club has grown back to what it should be, and people are happy with the overall situation. But then when it comes to the tried and true, it's time to win trophies, he fails every time. And then, even in the middle of the season, like sometimes he'll run through say a 5-game stretch of bad form. Everyone's questioning whether or not he'll stay. And then like his team turns into like 2011 Barcelona. It's the craziest thing I've seen in like probably in my history watching soccer.
But people still doubt it. People still doubt it. They're like, "Oh no, he's gonna run off a 10-game win streak, unbeaten streak. It's gonna be insane." They're gonna be like,
I mean, like think about it like this: this past game against Atalanta was like the ultimate example of this trend. Like they start off horribly. They go down 2 goals. Everyone thinks, okay, this is Ole's last game. Like he's done. And then all of a sudden they come back and win 3-2, but like in such like a weird fashion. Like that is exactly what happens with this guy. It's the craziest thing. You can't make it up. I just think for the sustainability, if that team was serious about winning, and I've told this to many United fans and they get pissed off at me when I say it, but it's true. If they were serious about winning this year, they would sack him and bring in Conte or Zidane. They'd bring in a proven winner that can take that team, because it's not that they have a bad team.
Coaching United,
they have the personnel. They just need a manager to put them in the right direction.
They never should have went for freaking Ronaldo.
Even if they don't get a GM, I'm confident that
Joe.
Conte can get it done with them. I really do. I really do think so. I just think that this guy he's done a lot from a I guess bringing back the stature of the club, bringing uniting the fan base. Like they've given me, like all the United fans have given me the whole spiel, and I bought into it. It's true, and he's made them relevant. He's been great for recruitment, but in terms of results on the pitch, you're telling me that this group of players can't do better than what they've been doing now? They're scraping by results. They're scraping by. You shouldn't be coming back after 2-0 down to Atalanta if you're that team with Ronaldo. I'm sorry, you should be dominating that game. So, it's not good enough. I think they're going to keep him because, like we've all discussed, it's very hard to see them let him go, especially after they've like re-signed his assistants and they've seen like they've been backing him all, entirely. But if they're serious about winning, and I'm going to say it again, if they're serious about winning, they'll bring in a manager like Conte, like Zidane, who's a proven winner, who can get big personalities and world-class players, bring them together and find a system in which they can succeed and win trophies.
I think
this manager is not, he's not a serious
I think
manager.
Zidane's a better manager for that team because it's not so much a project, more of a let's get this done right now with what we have. But speaking of managers, let's shift over to the Newcastle manager search, as they just let go of Steve Bruce, sadly. I mean, he was treated very poorly by the supporters there. I mean, you could argue he wasn't a good manager. It's time to go, but he was really just treated terribly by a lot of people. So sad to see him get fired. But, I mean, again, we've talked about last week we talked about the takeover. Who do you guys think would be a good manager to take over for them now? I think Erik ten Hag would be perfect for this project. Who do you guys think?
I just think that's a little ambitious. Like, I would love that too. I just don't know if Erik ten Hag would be okay leaving Ajax for Newcastle. I think he'd rather leave Ajax for Manchester United or for a big club that already has a project in place. I think right now they're linked with Paul Fonseca. I think that would be an interesting person to bring in because he's had experience with youth over at Roma. And developing players. I think that would be a pretty interesting shout. I think they're also linked with Steven Gerrard. Personally, I think Fonseca is a better fit than Gerrard.
Honestly,
You think so? I think Lampard might be the best fit, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Would be my 1 and 2 because Steven Gerrard is a Liverpool legend. He knows the league. He knows how to recruit. He knows how tough the fixtures are, right? And he was able to lead Rangers to the championship and God knows how long. Celtic dominates the Scottish Premiership. And he went to Rangers. He's built it up for the last couple of years, and he won a title there. So I mean, it's not the Premier League, obviously, but that gives you confidence knowing that you can turn around a group of players in the locker room, and they're going to have your respect because you've done it at every level. Unfortunately, Gerrard didn't win a title, like a Premier League title with Liverpool, but all the accomplishments that he had there, he's one of the best midfielders of all time. And that kind of pedigree going into a team like Newcastle with people who are now owned by Saudi Arabian oil businessmen, they're not going to necessarily know all the ins and outs of world football, especially English football. So if they hire someone like Steven Gerrard or someone like Lampard, they're showing that, okay, we don't have the best expertise in this area. Let's hire someone who does. Eric Ten Hag is not going to leave for Newcastle United.
Right.
You know, he just isn't. Even though it would be such an intriguing matchup, and I guarantee you he could do what Claudio Ranieri did with Leicester in 2015, but I don't think he'll be willing to leave his home country, you know, where he's so comfortable right now. Ajax is in the form of their life right now. As a team, they're actually ridiculous. Like Sebastian Haller has six goals in 4 games. He has him and Ronaldo are like 1 and 2, I believe, right now in the UCL for goal scoring. Sebastian Haller was obviously a man who was at West Ham United 2-3 years ago. Kind of had some goals every now and then, but just never really got to his full potential. Now that he's back in his home country of the Netherlands, he's off to a flyer right now. The guy had 4 goals in 1 game this year, and we haven't even gotten to the end of the qualifying group stage matches. So Ajax is a very dangerous team. They have Raden Gravenberch. They have Mohamed Kudus, the Ghanaian and Ethiopian kid. They have a lot of good young players there. Davy Klaassen, obviously Blind, who used to play for United, an Ajax legend as well. They had Hakim Ziyech there. So, I mean, they have an excellent job of developing youth over there. So it would be incredibly hard to convince someone like that to leave his home country and his native country for Newcastle, who, you know, don't necessarily have – I mean, the whole thing has to be gutted from inside out. You know, there's very few players that are going to be justified to stay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, again, you touched on Lampard. I'll expand on that. I think Lampard would be the best fit. And I know, Christian, you were agreeing. So I'll leave it to you in a second. But just I wanted to summarize my thoughts really quickly. The thing is, like, look what he did at Chelsea, right? He didn't win necessarily trophies, but I think Randall can attest to the fact that he really brought a lot of young players, because obviously they had that transfer ban. So they had to rely a lot on academy products and young players to progress. And Lampard did a fantastic job of integrating those players to the first team. And a lot of them are still integral parts of the first team. Mason Mount being a huge example of that. Obviously, Reece James being another example of that, and a few others. A lot of that was the work of Frank Lampard. Chelsea just needed a manager that could take him to that next level, similar to what United is facing right now. But if you're talking about developing youth and building an identity, Lampard's already done that in the Premier League. So why can't you give Lampard a chance to do that at Newcastle? And he's going to have the money, he's going to have the youth, he's going to have the backing of the ownership, and he's going to have the backing of the fans to create a long-term project. They need to build an identity right now under this new ownership, and I just think he's the perfect fit.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that we mentioned last week was, you know, when we talk about Newcastle being the rumors of them being linked to the likes of Haaland and Mbappe, it's way too early to be talking about them in that picture. And I think the same thing goes with managers. That's why when Joe mentioned Ten Hag, you know, in theory, it makes sense. You probably can attract him with a ton of money, but he's not going to leave Ajax. Ajax are the best team in the Netherlands right now. They are probably a legitimate threat in the Champions League this year, which I like that Randall mentioned all those players. They have a ton of quality. They played a fantastic match against Dortmund midweek. They are a threat in the Champions League this year. They probably could get out of their group. But that's just one example. But I completely agree, Max. I think Lampard could come in. He could steady the ship. He could, you know, really revitalize this team, and it brings in another personality. Because once again, you know, Joe mentioned Steve Bruce. I attest to what Joe mentioned before. It really bad situation. He was really, you know, disrespected at the end, especially. And I think, you know, whether it was the Newcastle supporters, the board, it was not a really well-run situation at the end. And I actually feel very bad for him. So hopefully he does all right. I think he's going to be done as a manager throughout the rest of his life. So he's had a very good career. But unfortunately, it just didn't end very well. But in terms of managers, I think Lampard comes in, or if he can, you know, get that job, he is, you know, available at the moment. He obviously hasn't had a job since whatever it was, December. I think he could come in, he could steady the ship. One team I look at for, possibly doing similar business in the way they did it this summer would maybe be a Crystal Palace. They went in, they got a lot of different players, but all of them have very good profiles. And if Newcastle could do something very similar, I think this could be the start of a team that could, start getting closer to mid-table again. Crystal Palace brought in Osan Edouard, who's been fantastic. Two new
Gallagher
center
from
backs,
Chelsea as well. Yep,
and
Gallagher.
Mark Leahy. I really enjoy watching Michael Olise, who's one of the best attackers from the championship last season. So there's a lot of good players that Crystal Palace bought in. If they can do similar business to what Newcastle could possibly do with their money, I would be really excited to see what they could do. But of course, the first thing, like we've all talked about, is getting a good manager in and a guy who can really, steady the ship. And I think of the options that are available, especially with Steven Gerrard being at Rangers and doing so well there, I think Frank Lampard is the perfect match for Newcastle right now.
What about, I don't know if he'll leave because of how well they're doing this season, but Graham Potter.
Graham Potter would be a good fit.
He's
I think he's going to shock a lot of
great
people.
coach.
Shock a lot of people today against City. That team is very well set up. Benzema for them is incredibly underrated. He's one of the best midfielders in the league. Joel Veltman. They also have Neil Mapai, as we know. He hates Arsenal, and I love that because every time he plays Arsenal, he seems to score. Brighton are set up for the future, and they're set up. And because, remember when they had Chris Houghton? He was such a popular fixture and player there, not player, manager there. So when they sacked him, I thought that was a very interesting move because he did get results. He kept them comfortably away from relegation. So seeing Brighton's ascension this last couple of years, Brighton and obviously West Ham United, they have both had some very good play as of late. So Brighton's I think they're gonna be a tough cookie today. Obviously, the quality of U City is probably gonna overwhelm them. I think guys like Grealish are gonna have a very good game against Brighton, but Brighton kind of remind me a lot of Brentford, the way they set up. They're not going to necessarily be negative with their football. They're going to be positive and they're going to look to score. So that should be a very intriguing matchup because United struggled immensely this year against Southampton, and Southampton's not a very good team. So that United's City's been kind of all over the place this year, but they should get it done.
Yeah, Brighton ball is amazing. Potter ball and Christian DeBlock. You know how much I love Potter ball.
You've been talking about it for a year. It seems like over a year now.
I love him. I can't wait to watch the game today. It's going to be insane. I'm going to get an episode of you in, and then I'm going to watch Potter ball versus Pep ball. Tell me, there's nothing better than that. This is football heritage. Two attacking teams, a team that's a ginormous team versus a team that's kind of on the smaller side but really playing really well. This is going to be great content. And honestly, it's probably, other than the Spurs West Ham fixture, it's probably my favorite fixture of the week.
Also, I think Rari he's not gonna last at Watford. Goodness gracious, that 5-0 defeat against Liverpool was embarrassing.
It made no sense that they sacked
what they scored for them was actually incorrect. Was actually insane. That was a bad game of football. That's the worst game of football I've ever seen. It was bad. And when Rari was at Sampdoria just last year, he was in Serie A. He wasn't even in for him. So they bring him back. Watford are desperate to stay up. They fired their new coach within the first couple games. And they think,
undeservedly so.
Yeah, they think Claudio Ranieri is going to get the job done, but he's not. He's not. So, Watford Football Club, I don't know, man. They're such a hit and miss. Obviously, I think Sarr, #free Sarr, he needs to be on a better team. He's like the whole team. And Troy Deeney, he's too old. So, their attacking options are few and far between. That's not a good thing when you're a team that's already facing relegation possibly. So, but last thing before we go, UCL was very exciting this week. Real Madrid had that 5-0 victory here, and they are looking very good. Rodrigo's playing well. Vinicius Jr. is playing well. El Clasico is obviously tomorrow. So there's a lot of things to watch for in La Liga this year. Let's talk about Real Sociedad, right? Real Sociedad is top of the league right now. That's insane. Isaac, the Swedish Alexander Isaac, the black Swedish player, he is playing incredible for them right now. David Silva, I mentioned that in my video for the UCL for TDSN just on Wednesday. Been exciting stuff to watch, but I think Barcelona have to be a little disappointed to only get one goal against a team like Dynamo Kiev. It's definitely been a changing of the guard. Barcelona is still quality, obviously locking down Pedri, locking down Ansu Fati, but Barcelona. How long does the hot seat stay hot for Ronald Koeman? I think with every passing game, it's a week-to-week situation with him. I'm surprised he's still the manager over there. But Memphis Depay is in the form of his life. He's been playing very well also. They made a lot of good moves. Despite losing their club legend, Lionel Messi, they made a lot of good moves for free transfers this year. So they should be in the top 3 this year competing for a title for La Liga again. Atletico have been kind of a mystery to me. Thomas Lemar has been playing really well. João Felix, man, he's so frustrating because you spend all this money to get him from Benfica, and he's just kind of been dropping stinkers left and right. You don't know what you're getting from him. And then he also has really good games. So he's a young player. He'll figure it out. He kind of reminds me a lot of Kai Havertz in the kind of way he plays. Hopefully they all get it figured out. But Atletico, I think, are going to defend their title this year. Or should be definitely, not counted against. So.
Yeah, I mean, La Liga's. I mean, I haven't been following it too much. I've been banging down with schoolwork and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised about Barcelona. They stink. They're just smelly. I mean, it's sad, but they're just not very good. Sociedad, that's surprising. But I think one of the Madrids is going to end up winning the league.
Yeah, definitely. And with Benzema playing in the form that he's in right now, it'd be hard to count them out. And imagine if Hazard ever recaptures his old form when he was at Chelsea. Imagine that. Like, that'd be a scary thought. Benzema firing on all cylinders and Hazard, finally finds a way to be healthy and playing his best football. That would be scary for the rest of the world. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have anything else, or should we wrap it up here?
I think we're good.
All right, guys. Make sure you guys tune into the TWSN Tailgate Show. It happens in 15 minutes at 11. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about